Well, after 18 consecutive wins, all good things must come to an end. But how did the UConn men's basketball team respond to its first loss since November? That's coming up.
And baseball is back, and while the Diamond is defrosting over at Elliott Ballpark, the Huskies are going to be on the road to start their season off. We'll take a look at their first opponent and catch up with UConn head coach Jim Penders in just a little bit. But first,
the reigning champions are still rocking and rolling as they continue an undefeated season. And guess who's back after a night off? Connecticut Game Week starts now.
Instead of veal Milanese, maybe we make veal Serbia.
Okay, I like it. Sounds great.
Maybe we do that, just for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I feel better right now.
Special guest at Gamble was almost impossible to miss, probably because he's over 7 feet tall. That extra voice you heard was former NBA player Boban Marjanovic, who spent his Wednesday night becoming a UConn superfan, and he might be on the short list for the tallest UConn fan ever.
I see what you did there with that. Apparently not planned, as you said.
Yeah, let the record show. I did not know that I did that until now. Well, welcome to Connecticut Game Week. I'm Sean Humphrey.
And I'm Alexa Harley. Now, Boban's fandom aside, the reigning national champions game against the Creighton Blue Jays was more of the same. A dominant 50-point win at home, but when the Huskies battled Butler this past weekend, someone important was missing, Sean.
We were missing Sarah Strong, sorely missing Sarah Strong. She rested against the Bulldogs, and it's safe to say she benefited from the time off. She absolutely dominated the first half against Creighton, swatting shots into the stands and looking like she couldn't miss. And in Sarah Strong terms, that means picking up where she left off. She finished with 16 points and was already in double figures by the end of the first half. Now, she only missed one game, and the Huskies handled business. They won by 32, but both AZ Fudd and head coach Gino Auriemma say the team noticed the difference between a lineup with and without Sarah.
I mean, it's not that different. It's kind of, it was honestly a lot more fun without her playing. No, I'm just kidding. It definitely is a different feel with her on the court versus off the court. We've been really fortunate to not have to experience her off the court too much. But when she's on the court, it's like, what is it like? It's like just a sense of peace and, harmony, like all things are right in the world.
Do I feel a difference when Sarah Strong is on the floor level of conference? Like if somebody stops hitting you in the head with a hammer, would you feel better? Yeah, big difference, right? Yeah, that's kind of how it is. When she's not on the floor, there's a lot missing, Sometimes you put a player on the floor, and this is what they do. This one thing. When you put somebody like Sarah on the floor, now you're missing a great shooter. You're missing a great post player. You're missing a terrific passer. You're missing another ball handler. You're missing maybe our best defender. So one person out of the lineup is like losing 3 or 4 people out of the lineup.
Final score 94-44. Just 5 games left in the regular season for the Huskies, and senior day at Gamble is right around the corner.
You want everyone to hurt. You want everyone to feel some level of, I don't want to ever feel like this again. That's part of why teams win championships.
Well, that right there was how Dan Hurley's work week began, trying to wash the sour taste of a tight loss to St. John's out of his mouth. And that loss at Madison Square Garden snapped an 18-game win streak and made the Big East a lot more interesting. It definitely did, but any Rocky fans know it's about how hard you can get hit and just keep moving forward. And make no mistake, the Huskies were hit hard in New York. Hurley was frustrated with the fundamental errors that were made, like late turnovers and missed free throws. But Wednesday night's clash with the Bulldogs was a bounce-back opportunity for the Huskies, and Solo Ball rose to that occasion. He finished with 24 points on the night, and that point about resilience, well, it's the story of the season for Ball. Coming into the midweek matchup, it had been a month since Solo shot over 50% from the field. And after the game, he gave credit to his teammates for helping getting back into his rhythm.
It felt good. My teammates always uplifted me, make sure I keep my confidence. As long as I trust in the playbook and trust my coaching staff and people around me, I know I'm going to be in the best spot to succeed. And, yeah, I mean, I just had it going tonight. People just kept finding me. So, I mean, it's just credit to my teammates, and I'm glad I was able to hit some shots.
Now, there was a lot going on in Wednesday night's game. You had the solo ball showcase, something that had been brewing for a while. You had the weight of getting back in the win column, which they did. It was also a homecoming for Indiana native Braylon Mullins. So much to talk about after the game. So what did head coach Dan Hurley discuss during his post-game remarks? You guessed it. What still needs work as the NCAA tournament quickly approaches? Specifically, rebounding. Hurley was less than impressed with the team's effort on the glass in the first half against Butler. And if we had to flash back to last Friday's loss to St. John's, the Red Storm were reigning in the rebounds, out-rebounding the Huskies by 6. And Hurley says if this team is thinking title, it needs to own the glass.
Butler's a team that we can offensive rebound against. St. John's, they punked us on the glass. So, we ran to backs and just stood there, whereas tonight we fought for inside position. But, that's one of a couple things that, if we don't get fixed, the rebounding, defensive rebounding, offensive rebounding, then we won't experience championship glory. We've got to get much better as a rebounding team.
And the next test for the Huskies is a matchup with Georgetown at Gampel on Saturday.
Time now for Top Dog, and there's no better place to start than with Alex Caravan. He tied Samson Johnson for the most wins as a Husky with 115 victories. The senior is averaging over 13 points and 5 rebounds this season.
And Fuego, which is my best attempt at a Spanish accent right there, I guess. Ali Zabel has been absolutely on fire. She dropped 20 points against Creighton in just 25 minutes. Zabel was 7 for 10 from the field, including 5 of 8 from downtown. She's now scored in double figures 4 of the last 5 games.
Safe to say their defense is terrified. And last but certainly not least, Woody to the rescue. Megan Woodworth with the game-winning goal in overtime against Providence. The Huskies won the game 2-1. Woodworth leads UConn with 13 goals this season, 3 of those game winners.
And even though some of the snow has melted, the Huskies are hitting the road and heading for some sunshine to open their season on the diamond. We'll give you a preview of UConn's baseball season opener against Nebraska later on.
And also ahead, we'll shine a light on our best in show. Another Big East Player of the Week, Silas Demery Jr. lights it up, and Tia Chan joins some elite company. Much more to come when Connecticut Game Week rolls on right after this. Welcome back in time for our Best in Show, presented by New Balance of South Windsor and Avon. Another week, another Husky takes Big East Player of the Week. AZ Fudd averaged 21 points and 3 assists in wins over DePaul and Butler. It's the 3rd time she's won the award this season.
Well, and last week was a big week for one Silas Demery Jr. He averaged 17.5 points per game, 6.5 assists per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, and shot 65% from the field, 57 from the arc in UConn's games against Xavier and St. John's to open play for the month.
And he did it in style. You knew he could ball, but did you know he could fly? The one-handed tomahawk flush on one of the nation's best centers will live in our hearts and minds, and maybe on our walls too. The poster slam didn't quite take the sting out of the loss to St. John's, but we're still talking about it now, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And speaking of talking about it, we're talking about Tia Chan. Outstanding season so far for her. Captain is a semifinalist for the HCA Women's Goalie of the Year award for the 2nd straight season. So far, Chan has 20 wins this season, the 2nd most in Division I with a .950 save percentage. Chan also has 4 shutouts this season. 3 finalists will be announced at the end of the month. And UConn football standouts Joe Fignano and Skylar Bell have been invited to the NFL Combine. After a stellar 2025 campaign from both the wide receiver and the QB, this duo will get to show off their skills for league scouts ahead of the draft. The 2026 NFL Combine will start on February 23rd and run through March 2nd at Lucas Oil Stadium. I know it sounds crazy, but the 2026 baseball season starts Friday night for UConn. The Huskies are coming off a bit of a heartbreaker to end their 2025 campaign, falling to Creighton in the Big East title game and ending a 6-year streak of earning a bid to the NCAA baseball tournament. And the Huskies will begin their quest to getting back into the NCAA tournament Friday night, taking on the Cornhuskers out of Nebraska. And to bring us a little insight into the back-to-back Big Ten champs on the diamond, I'm joined by Evan Bland, who covers Nebraska baseball for the Omaha World Herald. Evan, thanks for joining us. I guess first things first, Cornhuskers won their conference, then fell in the Chapel Hill Regional. Since then, what's the offseason been like for this team?
Well, I think it's kind of like you see around college baseball where there's a lot of roster turnover. It does seem like this is a team that's a little bit older than some others. You look around the infield and you've got a senior at third base, a 4-year starter at shortstop, a 5th-year guy who's a transfer at second base, 3rd-year guy at first. So they do have some experience there. I think one of the interesting things about Nebraska that maybe we'll find out in the first game is they really, in the offseason, said, hey, we're going to go from trying to hit a bunch of singles and steal bases and small ball to more of a power approach. So whether that shows up in the opener remains to be seen. I'm sure UConn would prefer that it didn't.
Now, there were a lot of changes to NCAA baseball this past year. One of them was having to cut rosters down to 34. And this Nebraska team, it has 22 newcomers. That's 12 veterans left over. What's the blend and identity of this Nebraska team?
Yeah, it is a blend. You've got some freshmen, you've got a handful of transfers, and then you've got kind of the guys that I mentioned that were back on the infield. They're going to start a freshman at catcher named Jeter Worthley, who's probably a future draft pick potentially. Like they're that high on him. They have a guy who's not necessarily new, but he's a 2nd-year guy, Devin Nunez, who was one of their best hitters last year as a freshman. They moved him from infield to center field permanently because they want his bat in the lineup. So how that plays out defensively, especially, I think will be kind of interesting. But really, like if you're talking about impact newcomers, I think it's probably going to come later on in the rotation. Their Saturday guy, Cooper Katsky's a former MAC pitcher of the year. Their closer, who Connecticut could see Friday, is Kevin Manel. He's a D1 bounce back. He's been at a couple different spots. Might be the most talented pitcher on the staff in terms of strikeouts. So you kind of have this blend of guys that you expect to make instant impacts and then some more depth pieces as well.
You started talking about the rotation there. One of the guys who's touted to get the start on Friday is righty Ty Horn. What can Husky fans expect to see from Horn on the mound?
I mean, he's got a 4-pitch mix, mid-90s velocity, and he's a competitor. Like, I think that's in baseball, you can see that kind of personality show more than you can in some other sports. I mean, he gets a big strikeout. He's going to let guys know. He's not afraid to talk a little bit of smack, and I think you want that on from a Friday guy. He does set the tone in that way, and he was a guy who last year kind of got bounced around a little bit. Was a starter, was a reliever, and then it got stronger as the season went on. I think his highlight was in the Big Ten championship game in Omaha. 20,000 Husker fans are there, and he goes 8 shutout against UCLA, which ends up going to the College World Series. So that's his ceiling, and I think he kind of understands his role on this team is to give Nebraska innings to set up the bullpen on Friday nights against quality opponents. And I think he's got the kind of that blend of the attitude and the skill set that you want in a guy that's going to set that tone every weekend.
Well, Evan Bland with the Omaha World Herald, thanks so much for joining us. And first pitch between UConn and Nebraska out in Arizona for the MLB Desert Invitational is set for 8 p.m. Eastern. And we just gave you a little insight into UConn's first opponent on the diamond. Coming up, we'll travel out to the somewhat defrosted Elliott Ballpark to catch up with UConn head coach Jim Penders about the start of the 2026 season.
Also ahead, the Hoyas are coming to town. What we can expect from a streaky Georgetown team with sports writer Gene Wong. Much more on Connecticut Game Week coming up.
Well, the snow has certainly piled up at Elliott Ballpark, but the Huskies did manage to get out on the field and practice ahead of their season opener against Nebraska. That's going to be out in Arizona. And last week, I sat down with UConn baseball head coach Jim Penders to talk about the frustrating end of the 2025 season, being excluded from the NCAA tournament, and how this 2026 team is feeling after roster changes and fall ball.
Coach Penders, thanks so much for sitting down and talking a little baseball with me this afternoon. I mean, first and foremost, when we look at this 2026 team, what excites you about the guys that you have?
I like how connected we are. I mean, I know that's a buzzword nowadays with teams, but I do feel as though the group came together very quickly. There's 21 newcomers, 18 returners. That's the first time in my tenure of 30 years now coaching here that we've had more first-year players than veteran players. So that you'd think would be a real challenge, but the chemistry does seem to be really strong. They seem to like each other. They're getting along well. We've also made a lot of adjustments. We made some changes in the way that we coach certain things and using technology a little differently, and just a few things that we implemented in the fall that they made very quick adjustments on, and so they're coachable. So that's a good place to start.
You go back to how last season ended, losing the conference title game and getting left out of Selection Sunday when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Has that left a bad taste in your mouth, and are you guys using that as fuel as you approach this upcoming season?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we didn't see our name pop up in a bracket on Memorial Day for the first time since 2017. It's a long time. And we're proud of the fact that we had that kind of streak, but it was devastating. That day was the beginning of this season for us. That day, I remember telling the guys, I want you all to have a mentality of watching that selection show over and over again and remember what it felt like. And we played it on the scoreboard in our first meeting of the year. For some of the newcomers that weren't in the room, I wanted them to have a sense of how much that hurt.
When you look at your roster, who are some of the names that you're seeing that you expect to have pretty big breakout seasons?
Well, we certainly hope, Maddox Delana was the Big East preseason player of the year a year ago and didn't get to play. He had a wrist injury and he's got it taken care of now, and he's at full strength. I expect big things from him. Tyler Minnick is a guy that we expect. He had 22 homers last year. I don't know how many teams have 22 homers coming back from one player, and we're fortunate that he's back with us. I think he could have a real breakout season and be special. He's trying to take over center field, so he's also doing a little bit of a position switch. Robbie Rispoli, our other captain, did an awesome job in his first year as a starting shortstop. He was a first-team All-Big East performer. Expect big things from him out of the leadoff spot. And then our arms have been coming together really well. Charlie West, Caden Suki, three left-handers, and Oliver Pudvar. They kind of have the inside track on winning those weekend rotation spots. So I'm excited to see how they kind of lead us on the mound. We were missing something on the mound last year, and I really feel good about those three guys.
And still to come, it's Valentine's weekend, and if you don't have plans, there are plenty of games on the horizon, a couple of Big East showdowns, and a big home-and-home series against Maine, and much, much more. We'll tell you what's in store is next.
And one shot, one opportunity, one Husky. Shout out to Eminem, I guess. Coming up, Alexa and I have a difficult choice to make out of any UConn players ever. Who would we want to take the last shot of the game? More Connecticut Game Week when we return.
Well, we dove into the start of the new baseball season, plenty so far, but it's not just action on the diamond that's headed your way.
Of course, we have exciting things happening all around, including the hardwood and the ice. So here's what's in stores. We start with a Valentine's Day matchup in Milwaukee. The women's basketball team faces Marquette in a Big East showdown. The Huskies defeated the Golden Eagles earlier this season, 89-53, and UConn leads the all-time series 23-1. Tip-off is at 1 o'clock Eastern on Fox Sports 1.
And as we told you earlier, the men's basketball team is hosting Georgetown on Saturday night. UConn squeaked past the Hoyas earlier this season, 64-62. Terrace Reed Jr. had a double-double in that one. It was UConn's 11th straight win over Georgetown. Also on tap for this Valentine's night showdown, Hashim Thabit will feel the love. He's set to be the 24th inductee into the Huskies of Honor. Tip-off is at 8 o'clock. Our Sean Humphrey will be there, and Sean, you're fired up.
I am fired up, and that's why I spoke with Gene Wong, a sports writer formerly with the Washington Post. He likes the Huskies' chances, but says an upset isn't out of the question.
That's why you play the games, right? On any given night, anything can happen. As Georgetown showed almost in D.C., that it came down to a shot at the very end that could have forced overtime or won the game. So, yeah. But I suspect that Connecticut's going to have a long memory from that game, and they're going to want to put this one away early. And if they're focused and committed, I just don't think Georgetown has the talent to hang with them.
And the walls at Gamble Pavilion will be a little bit more crowded next week as Emeka Okafor's number 50 is retired. Okafor's 2004 season was one of the best in UConn history. He was a consensus first-team All-American, the National Player of the Year, and the Final Four's most outstanding player on his way to a national title and the second pick in the NBA draft. 22 years later, he's still one of the greatest players in program history. His jersey will be the third the program has retired after Richard Hamilton and Ray Allen.
Yeah, pretty good company there. The men's hockey team with a home-and-home against Maine this weekend. The series will make the trip up to Orono Saturday night. UConn is also coming off a 2-0 victory over Northeastern last week. Tyler Muselik had 16 saves in that shutout. UConn leads the all-time series with 15 wins, 7 losses, and 5 ties.
And the Big East Championships in swimming and diving are right around the corner. It all takes place February 18th through the 21st at Florida Aquatic Swimming and Training in Ocala. As a city Alexa and I are familiar with, UConn will be competing against 6 other Big East schools. Villanova is the defending Big East champion.
I got to go with Ray Allen, the one and only.
Ray Allen!
Ray Allen, one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. That's it. Solo ball.
I'm going to have to go with Solo Ball. He is our shooter of the team right now this season. So if there was 15 seconds left on the clock, I'm definitely shooting it to Ball.
He's a beast. He's physically strong, he's fast. He's got all the attributes to be a great player.
Diana Taurasi. Joey Calcaterra. Joey Calcaterra. Because he's a legend, and that man would come off the bench and hit three-pointers like nobody's business.
For a second there, I was going to say we're having a runaway favorite between Solo Ball and Ray Allen, but a lot of different names for who they would want to take the one final shot if they could pick a guy.
Yeah, the Joey Calcaterra pull, that was the top dog captain there. That was a good pull. He shot about 44.7% from deep when he was at UConn, but obviously, if you couldn't tell, we asked UConn fans, any Husky ever could take the last shot, 15 seconds left in the game, who would they choose? And Alexa, I gotta ask you, who would you choose?
I'm going to pick one woman, one man. If I'm going women, I'm going Paige Beckers.
Okay.
Just from numbers alone, it felt like she just couldn't miss. If I'm going with the guys, it's kind of tight between Ray Allen, best three-point shooter statistically, and Okafor, best shooting percentage of any UConn Husky ever. So that's who I would go with if I was picking one person with 15 seconds left.
Okay, I'm gonna play copycat a little bit when it comes to the Huskies.
Steal my answers, why don't you?
No. But I am going to choose one woman and one man. And on the women's side, it is tough for me not to go Maya Moore. I'm a big Maya Moore fan. We are, it's a big Maya Moore fandom in this house. Rip Hamilton for the guys, one of my favorite players in NBA history. And I guess we don't have that much time left, but I'm glad I got my answers in.
No one's picking us for one last shot, that's for sure.